Okay, what we're going to talk about next is achieving some body to chassis float, which is pretty important for us non-magnet wood track racers from time to time, to say the least. Anyway, unfortunately, this car does not have any at all out of the box. I've already removed the 3 screws, but there's no play here, so you can't just back the 3 screws off and get float. And the reason for that is the body to chassis fit is just extremely tight. So I'll pop this off for you, and you can hear that, how tight that is. It is a very tight fit. This body really clamps onto this chassis, so you're just not going to get any float unless you do some work on it. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to do some body mods, and we're going to do some chassis mods to get that float. Okay, the first thing we're going to talk about is the body mods I'm going to make. If you'll notice right here on the edges, on the outside edges of the body right here, you'll notice these little uprights. These have to go. These sit down into the chassis, and they make it a very tight fit. And you can also notice right here, this part here is already broken off. That's just how much pressure there is just taking the chassis off. You're going to break those. So I just used a hobby knife and carved them away so that the chassis can you know, have room to move around. So you're going to want to get rid of those. You can use a hobby knife, you can use a Dremel, whatever you're comfortable with. So those have to go. The second thing is these uprights back here on the interior. These sit down over the top of the bushings, supposed to hold them in place. It does do that, but we're going to glue our bushings anyway. We don't need these. It just resonates vibration from the chassis, and it does interfere with float, so we're going to trim those off. This just shows you what I've done. I've just taken these, carved them away, so they are out of the way. We're good to go there. The interior tray I've popped out. It's easy to pop out, and I've trimmed away those posts. So now we can snap the interior tray back in there, and it's ready to go. Now we're going to move on to the chassis. Okay, just a small thing. You know, it can be a big thing just depending on the amount, but on the body post right here, sometimes there can be some flash molding where the screws come out and they go in and they leave a little bit of flash on top. Anyway, I use some 1000 grit sandpaper, and I just go over the top of the post just a little bit, and I just clean that flash molding off just to make sure they're smooth. That way when they're sitting on the chassis, there's no flash molding hanging up you know, to catch it and stop it from floating. Okay, now we're going to talk about some chassis modifications. The main thing that we're going to do here is we're going to sand these outer edges all the way around. We're going to reduce the material so that when we put the chassis and the body back together, that the body doesn't have that clamping effect. It has something to clamp to, and it'll give you some nice body float. Now, you can accomplish this in many ways. If you've got advanced tools, you can use belt sanders, you can use anything you want. You'll notice that I have a milling bit here in my Dremel. That's one of my favorite tools. It's really quick and easy to get around here. Sanding barrel, even a cutting disc, or good old-fashioned hobby knife. You can use a flat file, but these are my preferred methods. Anyway, once we get done, then we're going to be able to test fit the chassis to the body, and that's what you should do during the process. Keep test fitting and making sure that you have a free floating chassis. We're going to show you that in just a second. Okay, we're going to talk about the chassis body screws. You may not think it's a big deal, but it can be. What we're talking about is that the original screws that come with the car, they have a lot of thread, full thread all the way there, all the way to the head. And what happens is when you put those in the car, that those threads can catch up on the plastic, you know, on the post. So there's a couple things you can do to eliminate that. First thing you can do, we've done this for years, is take a rat tail file and go inside here and enlarge the hole, clean it up a little bit, and then that way the threads don't catch. But even then, sometimes the threads on this screw will catch. So the other way is you can take a small file and sit here and file this top part right here and make it smooth. But I gotta tell you, I'd rather order a salad in a steakhouse than to do this. This is so tedious, so I just don't do it anymore. A lot of companies have some screws out there. SCC is one of them. They have these nice screws that have a smooth shank right there. this is a 6mm, and that's what I used in here. So once you do that, you put those screws in there and you still got your body float. So that really makes life easier. So any way you approach it, as long as you get that body float you're looking for, I think you'll be happy. Hope this helps you guys, and I'd like to hear your feedback.